Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. Coming up on today's show, the Falcons have requested interviews, but I got my favorite already ready to roll.
And so we may have cheers for the Hawks on a 3-game winning streak, but maybe still jeers about everything else that's going on with the organization.
And last but not least, and for the culture, Ed Reed done messed up the church's money.
This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
I want to say thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast. Wherever you download your podcast, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate that from you in advance. Today's episode of ATL Day Ones is brought to you by Bet Online and T. If the folks want to find us on the big screen, how about this? Amazon and Roku, either or, one or the other. All you got to do is type in the search box once you get there. Locked On Sports Atlanta. We will pop right up right there for you. Now, the Atlanta Falcons. Arthur Smith talked extensively about how he wanted the Atlanta Falcons to have a wide search for their new defensive coordinator after Dean Pease retires after 2 seasons. He was under contract for 3, but he only did 2. And we talked about on this show about how that was probably likely. That was probably going to go down. But T, when you look at this list, and for those who don't know, we're looking at Jerry Gray, who is the pass game coordinator for the Packers. He actually had a coach with Arthur Smith when he was with the Commanders and with the Tennessee Titans. Mm-hmm. Also, we got Brian Flores, who is a very popular name for football reasons and for other reasons. Well, he has a lawsuit pending lawsuit against the NFL at this moment, right as we speak. And also, we have Al Holcomb, who is the defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, who ended up taking over once Matt Rule got fired and let go. Steve Wilkes said, hey, we want to get this other dude out of here. Al, come do your thing. And he did a pretty solid job up there in Carolina. And I think, T, when you think about these names, and also you have Frank Bush, the internal candidate, who's a strong candidate as well, does any of those names tickle your fancy, or is there somebody else that you feel like the Falcons should take a look at?
Yeah, actually, and I know this is probably a stab in the dark, but Sean McVay did give his staff the opportunity to pursue other roles. And don't get me wrong, this is just a wish list, guys. Jarvis asked me what I wanted. He didn't ask me what was really going to happen. So I'm answering the question of what I want. So if I had my druthers, of course I'd want Rob back here. Raheem Morris is an amazing defensive mind. And of course, I hope for Rob that he gets a head coaching job. He deserves one at this point in his career. However, you asked me what my wish list was, and Raheem Morris is always going to be my wish list because remember what he was able to do with still a leaky defense when Dan Quinn got fired, and we know what he was able to do in the back half of that season before moving on to the Rams. So, of course, I'm going to always have Rye at the top of any list for DC for the Falcons, but I also do like Brian Flores. I know that maybe it comes with a little bit of baggage, but I also know what my beloved Steelers were able to do this season with him, not just as a linebacker coach, but also as a confidant and a voice that Mike Tomlin listened to very much so. And that defense kind of held us down in the beginning of the season when the team was 2-6, but the defense was still coming along. And a lot of what happened with the Steelers on the back end being 7-2, it really was the defense. And you got to give a lot of credit to the linebacker core that Brian Flores oversaw. So I like that one. I think Ryan Nelson could be a dark horse because, of course, Terry Fontenot has familiarity with him. So you can't overlook him, coupled with the fact that he'll have familiarity with the NFC South. So if the goal is to at least get out of your division next season, as far as the postseason goes, I like that as an option. But Jarvis, I said it before, and I'll say it again. Don't overlook Frank Bush, because we also know the growths by leaps and bounds that we have seen in the defensive coordinator space or the defensive space of the Falcons. Particularly, we like what the linebackers have been able to do this season. So you cannot dismiss what he was able to do and also what he was able to learn under Dean Pease the past couple of years.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then and a lot of these guys have the crossover, like you mentioned with
Yes.
Terry Fontenot, and then I mentioned Jerry Gray, and then when you look
Hmm.
at some of the with Brian Flores, he actually was an
Yeah.
assistant under Dean Pease for 2 years
That's
in New England.
exactly.
So those are some of the things that I feel like you see why these guys are being reached out to, or why these guys are being sought out, because hey, there's some familiarity there. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing that Terry Fonda talked about, that
Hmm.
crossover and people that you coach with.
Yes.
That's where you start. Like when it comes to these searches, and I think that they're doing a pretty good job as
Right.
to what trying to work that situation out. Now,
Right.
as
And
far
Jarvis,
as
if I could just add this,
what,
if you don't mind, one of the things I would say too is yes, I love the extensive search piece of it, but and you know this better than most. Another piece that I feel would be important is this: if they're able to get that DC in place prior to their trip to Indianapolis for what we affectionately call the Underwear Olympics, but the combine,
yes,
and they're able to have that person in place to sort of help with that evaluation and scouting process, I think that'll be key as well. Because hey, we know a Brian Flores, a Ryan Nelson, or really anybody that you have on this list has been able to work with linebackers who know what to do. But I also say they've seen those good D linemen like a Cam Hayward, or they've seen those edge rushers like a TJ Watt. So they know what to look for in terms of who, as we always like to say on this show, who gonna bring some help for Grady. They know
of
what,
course.
yeah, they know what excellence looks like as far as what that defensive lineman or that edge rusher with the front looks like. They know it. So I do believe also if they can have those guys in advance of the combine, that would help, so that when we come to the draft point and we go all defense, all defense, all defense, maybe one O lineman, they'll know what they're looking for.
See how she repeated herself? That means you need to pay attention as well. So if you're vying for or wanting wide receivers and stuff, listen to T. She know what the hell she's talking about. Thank you very much. All right. Now, I think out of those guys, I really like Brian Flores. I really think that
Mm.
he can be a solid addition to this coaching staff. And another guy that was denied, they were denied the option to talk to him or speak with him is Ajiro Avero out of Denver, because we
Yeah.
all know what a poop show it was out there in Denver, T. And this man was still out there coaching and having this
Yeah.
defense keep them in games when their
Yes.
offense could barely score 12
Yes.
points. So
Exactly.
for the
Mm.
job that he did, and the rumor is that he turned down the opportunity to be the interim head coach, and it looks like he wants out, but Denver is trying to keep him around for some reason, because they said it would be a lateral move. But I think that if that situation works itself out to where
Mm.
now he's up for head coaching spots as well, so that's another piece to take a look at. And Brian Flores
Mhm.
as well, he will be interviewing with the Arizona Cardinals. So those are a couple of things to keep an eye on. As you know, those guys are valuable if they're getting head coaching
Indeed.
opportunity interviews as well. So Falcons got a nice little list right there. I'll be interested
Mhm.
to see what that final result will be. Now, as far as this Saturday, the Georgia Bulldogs, they were celebrating the back-to-back national championships, and a lot of people were complaining about how Stetson Bennett was acting and being on his phone and all this stuff right here going on. But I think the not I think the main thing that happened that really devastated the city of Athens was the group of people that got into the accident, and Devin Willock and Chandler LeCroy lost their lives in a single vehicle crash in Athens around about 2:45 that morning. And they from my understanding, T, that one of I think it was Chandler who fell asleep at the wheel and ended up running off the road and hitting
Mhm.
a couple trees and stuff like that, and the power
Yeah.
lines and everything. So they did not make it, T. But this is when you're talking about just going from an extreme high to extreme low, and I think this is a prime
Yeah.
example of it.
It is. It really, really is. And Jarvis, before we go into the real tragedy, I
Mhm,
also want to point out a tragedy of sorts.
mhm.
I want everybody to leave Stetson Bennett alone,
Yeah,
because, yeah, there will be time, right? If he makes it to the NFL, for him to get proper etiquette and have a PR team behind him to tell him what to say and how to act. Listen, you may say, oh, he's 25, but he is still, at the end of the day, a college quarterback who has done things that have never been seen before by that Georgia program.
right.
So to me, it's a sad commentary that people are all in their feelings about him being on his phone or the things he said or even the t-shirt he wore. Get real. Get real. Let that
Yeah.
kid enjoy his moment because this might be his final moment. We don't know if he's going to make it to the NFL. So I have no problems with what he did as long as he wasn't out there, spouting expletives or racist commentary or anything like that. Enjoy
Right.
yourself because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I just wanted to kind of say that just because I feel like, man, don't we have other things that are important to pay attention to?
Right.
But on a more serious note, yes, man, what a devastating piece. Because, of course, we were all waking up the next morning hoping to revel in what had just happened in Athens the night
Yes.
before. And all of a sudden, I know, Jarvis, you and so many of us saw our phones just blowing up, just tweet after tweet after tweet. And all you saw was names,
Yeah.
Devin Willock and Chandler LeCroy. And something just told you that it wasn't good. It wasn't
Yeah.
that you were seeing these names for good. And
Right.
unfortunately, we got the news that they lost their lives. And one thing I want to say as well for both Tori and Warren, prayers up for them because survivor's remorse is real.
No doubt. No
And
doubt about it.
in addition to them possibly wondering for the rest of their lives why they made it and why the other two didn't, I know how personally impactful that is because my god brother, who's also a cousin, passed away. But before he passed away, it took him decades to get past that because
Yeah.
the same situation happened. His cousin on his other side of the family, they were driving, four of them in the car. The two in the back survived, my cousin being one of them. The two in the
Mhm.
front did not. It is a
Yeah.
very, very long road for those who survive. So keep your prayers up for both Warren and Tori in this situation, that they come out with no issues as far as the physical piece, and that they'll find a space and a place of healing professionally, personally, and mentally and spiritually as well. That said, man, Jarvis, you hate it because you see so much promise and so much positivity in both of them. People who
Yes.
cross their paths have nothing but beautiful things to say about them. So I just hate it. And whether they were good people or bad people, that doesn't even matter. It just makes
True.
it that
Yeah.
much tougher when you know that these are individuals who brought so much love and light to that program in certain spaces. So yeah, just a tough tragedy. And the one thing I will say is this: even before this tragedy, the dogs always talked about it being a family down there in Athens. So
Yeah.
my hope and my encouragement is in the fact that they already saw themselves as family. I feel like they're just going to wrap their arms around one another, and they're going to be that much tighter to make sure that they're able to get through this tragedy the right way.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about because like situations like these is what help you put things in perspective, right? Because a lot of times, people always talk about learning from other people's situations, and it's unfortunate that we have to learn from people, leaving
Mhm.
this earth. You know what I mean? But I
Right.
think that it even got me to thinking, and I even had a conversation with a couple of my homeboys. We was like, man, dude, think about all the times that we were riding
Right.
riding up early in the morning,
Yeah.
God knows, not to say that this was going with them, but for me personally, like, under the influence or coming from a partying all night and all that stuff and jumping
Right.
in the car and driving,
Mhm.
trying to make it home and stuff. And it's just like, man, but
Yeah.
we're still here, so,
Still
but
here.
it
Yeah.
helps you kind of like look at it, think like, okay, like tomorrow's not promised. Like it's
No.
not promised to
No.
anybody. So,
Right.
and like you said, what we will do and continue to do is just definitely keep all the Georgia Bulldog nation in our prayers because like this is something like you said, when you're celebrating coming off of just being on such a high with
Yeah.
back-to-back national championships and being on the national stage, and then you're on the national stage for something like this. So
Yeah.
I think that all the prayers to all the family and each and every person involved
Mhm.
in this particular situation, to all the family of
Mm.
LeCroy and the Willock family as well.
Yes. Absolutely.
So I think one of the things that I wanted you guys to do, make sure you guys check out betonline.net because it is the fastest and easiest way to check in all your betting needs and sports information from all the latest odds, contests, and player props, you name it. Go there and they will have you set up there ready to go. We know we're in January right now. We know March Madness is getting ready. It's right around the corner. So you need to get on your college basketball teams and see what's out there for you, what team you need to take a look at, what team you need to focus in on as you get ready to try to win some money, because that's what it's all about, right? Because BetOnline remains the best spot for all your latest sports developments, including podcasts and reviews for all the leagues this season. Now, you guys come to us each and every day for all your ATL sports needs. Go to Bet Online for all your sports betting information because they have podcasts there waiting right there just for you. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to head to the website today or use your mobile device or learn about the trends and the action because Bet Online is where the game starts.
So, Jarvis, it has finally happened again. The Hawks are on a 3-game winning streak. They beat the Pacers in Indiana, beat the Raptors, which they hadn't done in about 6 or 7 years, in Toronto. And of course, they beat the Heat here at home Monday night. And really, Jarvis, if you look back, it's really 4 out of the last 5. And it could have been 5 straight because
Yeah.
they beat the Clippers in LA to wrap up their road trip 2-2, and they got that close to beating the Bucks as well. So
Yeah.
here's the thing. We always brace ourselves as the media who covers the Hawks and as the fan base who supports the Hawks on whether or not we think that they are turning the curve. So let's start there. Do you think that this is an indication that the Hawks are turning the corner? And keep this in mind, JD. Keep this in mind. Next couple of games to wrap up January.
Mm-hmm.
At Mavericks, host Knicks, host Hornets, at Bulls, at Thunder, host Clippers, at Blazers. Just keep all that in mind before you answer that question.
Okay. All right. So, and isn't it ironic that they are going out to play the Dallas Mavericks after all these reports of Trae Young potentially being traded and not about to get ready to go play the dude that he was traded for initially? You know, But anyway, I know we're probably going to touch on that just in a little bit. But to answer your question, I think that I'm not going to get my hopes up. I'm gonna be as probably as realistic as I possibly can with this team because, like I said, I said I was done with this team, and a lot of people took that literally. Like, hey, I can't be done with the team. I gotta watch the doggone team. I gotta be able to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? So I ain't gonna do y'all like that. I wouldn't do y'all like that. That would be a disservice to you all as like those Sports Atlanta family. Now I don't mess with family. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't do that to y'all. But I think that it's going to take for me to see a little bit more of what we've been seeing, right? Like what we've been seeing is Trae Young who's been very, very good lately shooting from behind a 3-point arc because, like he said, to start the season, it wasn't doing well. When you talking about shooting 28%, it was probably his worst shooting year from behind the arc in his entire career. So
indeed,
that's coming around. Even his defensive prowess is starting to come around, just being active and getting in passing lanes and all that stuff and joining the party, right? Because we know what Dejounte Murray brings to their squad defensively. And, they brought him out of the depths of the NBA as far as being one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. So now they're kind of hovering around 15, 16, right there, right in the middle of the pack, right? That's all we asked for when we're talking about being one of the best offensive teams last year and coming into this year. So I need to see more. I think that's my answer. I need to see more because I'm not gonna jump back in on this bandwagon. I'm not gonna do it to myself because hey, this team has been up and down like the doggone stock market, more so down. And then when you have all this drama going on off the court, it just adds to that, right? It just compounds each other, right? So that's kind of where I am right now. So I'm a little excited, but I'm holding that way down in the deeps of the draws and gut of my soul, until I see more. I got to see more.
And I tend to agree with you. We are just being cautiously optimistic because it's a small sample size. I mean, we're talking about 4 of the last 5 games. We're talking about 3 straight. And granted, these are all quality teams. So that's a good look. And even the loss you took to the Bucks, still a quality team that you almost beat. So I do respect that, but I agree with you. I think one of the biggest tests will come Wednesday when they're at the Dallas Mavericks, one of the better teams, one of the teams that's playing their A game in the league this season. It's always an issue, a challenge, drama when it comes to the Knicks. We just don't quite know.
Exactly, yeah.
And so you look at the rest of the schedule and you have a lot of games that will allow them to go on a run and really, really get back into this thing. But again, you really just don't know what the impact is going to be to all of the things that are swirling. I mean, Jarvis, it seems like we, as ATL Day Ones, And as a Locked On Sports Atlanta family, hear something from our sources, a different story every day, a different take, a different angle, more information on the angles that have been shared. And then, of course, we have our other colleagues who are in the market who are sharing the same thing. And then you've got national reporters coming in. So we have said for quite some time that where there's smoke, there's fire. And it took a minute for the fire to start showing itself, but it is hot like fire, like hot down there at State Farm Arena. So yes, it's great to win 4 out of the last 5. Yes, it's great to win 3 straight, but let's just be real about this thing. At the end of the day, we're still talking about a team that essentially is 19 and 22. So there's still a ways to go, right?
Right.
And when you look at the standings, you're still talking about a team that is where are we now? And I have to look because it changes seemingly every single day. So they're still in 9th place. And
Ninth place, yeah.
correction, by the way, they have gotten back to 500. So I do want to give them their credit for that.
Yes.
But they're in 9th place right now. So you still have to ask the question of how did we get here? How do we get past this? And real talk, you got dirty laundry that's still unfolding, and stories and drama and friction that's still developing. And you got to ask yourself the question, how we get here, and can the Hawks fight their way out of it with all of this stuff still swirling?
I think that the guy that I mentioned earlier, Dejounte Murray, is if you're gonna lean on somebody, if I can pick one person that you could possibly lean on to kind of like navigate this team through this, and he probably didn't ask for this. He didn't ask to probably be a leader, but I think that we kind of deemed him the leader early on in the season when the Hawks were actually looking like a team that could potentially contend in the Eastern Conference. But now, when you're talking about dealing with all the drama, and I think Dejounte kind of put it in the best way he possibly could without saying, coming out and being really straight up and keeping it funky. He said, I'm just trying to find my way in Atlanta, like in ATL. I'm like, so I think that when you think about that, like, hey, he didn't come here expecting all this drama. This dude came from the San Antonio Spurs, where there ain't no drama off. Even if it is drama, it ain't no drama off the court. Like, it is, lips are sealed out there in San Antonio. Like, that's the one thing that you have to kind of respect about that organization. But coming into here and having to deal with this, and I think that since this Sam Amick report came out, like, these guys on a 3-game winning streak. So I think that if I'm going to lean in a certain way or lean towards one player, it's going to have to be Dejounte Murray, because I think that he has the mental fortitude to kind of deal with this. I can't depend on JC because he got 7 million trade scenarios going on in his head, and he's still trying to find his way. Trae is finally starting to play well offensively. So I think that if Trae plays well, like, it's more than likely the team's going to have a chance to win. And they're more likely going to have a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter. So and his leadership skills are still questionable in my mind, or probable, if I could use the injury designation in that particular moment. So right now, I'm just going to lean towards Dejounte Murray being that guy to get these guys through this. And if he's able to do this with the teams that you just listed, as far as the upcoming schedule, the Hawks have a chance to turn this thing around as we get ready to head up against the trade deadline on February 9th.
Now, to me, you just hit the nail on the head of what gives me a little bit of pause. We know how we got here. We got here because, let's just be real, the friction between Trae Young and Nate McMillan, the inability for the backcourt of Trae Young and Dejounte Murray to really kind of figure out how they coexist together. And somebody said this yesterday, and I chuckled because I don't agree, but they said they're the same player. No, they're not. They have a lot of similarities in their offensive game, maybe, kind of, sort of, but no, they're not even close to the same player. Dejounte Murray can play both the 1 and the 2. DJ can. So, but I still feel like it was one of those situations where, they looked like they melded initially, but maybe we called it too soon. Maybe they hadn't melded as much as we thought they had, in terms of what do you do when the chips are down? Who then takes over and who takes the lead in the locker room and on the court? So I think that is still a work in progress that is finally maybe starting to flesh itself out, because maybe they're having some real conversations. Like, man,
Yeah.
look, I came here for XYZ. I'm just here to do XYZ. How can we make this better? I'm waiting for that revelation to come out, that's a part of maybe how this win streak started to play itself out. I think the other piece is this. A couple of things have to happen. JC did, according to a recent report, he's approved to request a trade.
Yeah.
So
These
I
people,
think that piece is another layer that had not been reported in previous trade conversations. So I think we're actually closer than we think we are to a trade there. What I would like to see them do, should they get rid of JC or let him move on, is bring in a veteran who can also stabilize the team. Because as much as it's great that DJ and Trae are finally melding and figuring it out, they're still the missing piece. And I'm going to keep saying this until it's addressed. You got no Vince Carter, you got no Lou Williams, and they were the stabilizing forces in that locker room, that even when the Hawks swooned last season, Lou was a part of helping them on the court and off the court to get it back right. I still think they're missing that person. Right. So I feel like you need to get that person either in two spaces. Either if you let JC move on, or if you go out and get yourself a sniper to help out with some of their 3-point woes. They're getting better, but they still may need one other sniper. And I think that's going to be important. Also, Jarvis, how maybe a Kyle Korver or somebody can address the unrest that is going on in that front office. Because the more you hear about it, maybe it doesn't seem like it affects the players, and maybe it doesn't. But essentially where it'll affect you is if you don't make the right move at the trade deadline. Is if you don't make the right move in the draft, if you don't make the right moves in free agency. So you may have to think about it as long, bigger picture. But I still think, Jarvis, with some of those issues there, that's a question. Now, let me ask you this before we wrap up our Hawks talk. Speaking of that, now you have Kyle Korver, who's officially been announced as the assistant GM. Half the world is okay with it. Half the world is not. My question is this. What are your thoughts on how Kyle Korver can do two things, if you believe he can? Number one, balance out things in a very seemingly unsettled front office, but also help to balance things out within that locker room.
Wow. That's a good question. And to be honest with you, the former, as far as the front office, I don't think he can. I just don't. I don't think he can, because I don't think he has enough cachet. I don't think he has, the necessary resume that takes when you're talking about conversations and pounding the table for certain players, or hey, I'm trying to see if we can tap. I'm picking up the phone trying to call this person. I don't think that's going to happen. Right. I think Landry Fields kind of has that cachet, and let's keep it funky. Let's keep it a buck. Nick Wrestler does too. You know what I mean? Like, so what's Kyle Korver's relationship with Nick Wrestler? We haven't heard anything about that, because we know that Sam Amick reported that a lot of executives around the league wholeheartedly believe that this dude is making the big boy decision. Nick Wrestler, that is. So when you have those reports being out there, I don't think an assistant general manager who is getting his first stab at being in that front office, I don't think he's not pulling any weight like that. I don't believe it. So, but I think, however, I do think that he can help in that locker room piece, because he's been in that locker room, and those guys understand that he's been in that locker room, and they know what type of guy he is. So from that standpoint, from that piece, I feel like that's where he's going to earn his money. So he's going to earn his check, being in the locker room, making sure he's establishing rapport with all of the guys in the locker room, having conversations, backdoor conversations about how they feel about the locker room. Who do they feel? Who do they like? Who they don't like? Hey, let's have a meeting. Like, let's go ahead and hash this bad boy out, because we need to do whatever we need to do to start getting some dubs. Because at the end of the day, that's what all that matters. Or everybody gonna be up out of here, except for the rest, of course. They ain't gonna fire us. There we go.
Indeed. And I think I tend to agree. Kyle Korver could be a stabilizing force, because at least he's somebody who's thoughtful, right? He's a very cerebral former player. And he may not have all of the experience on his resume per se, as far as front office dealings, but I do think that he may be a stabilizing force of some sort. But I also agree with you. The bottom line is that in order for the Hawks organization to be seen in a respectful manner, for players to be like, oh, wow, they have everything together in the front office, which means they probably going to have it together on the sidelines and on the basketball court, is Landry Fields has to assert his authority as the GM. He basically has to say, I'm the GM. I'm where the final decision rests. Yes, we can be a collaborative team here, Kyle, Nick.
Yeah.
But that's it. The other piece there is this. I think that at the end of the day, Kyle Korver is probably in that front office because he can be a liaison. So he can tell you what's really going on in that locker
It's a
room,
perfect
and
word.
you can make decisions accordingly. So I like that hire for those two reasons alone, but we shall see because, hey, the Hawks are going to get their first test after this streak and going back into a positive space when they take on the Mavericks tomorrow night. And if you want to hear all about it, you know where to go. Check on Locked On Sports Today because they've got all the reaction, not just to what's going on in the NBA with the Hawks, but also the cray-cray NFL postseason. It has been so crazily exciting, and I know they have thoughts on what we saw in Tampa last night. So don't forget to check them out after you check out ATL Day Ones. You can check them out on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you download your podcasts. And hey, you know we're about to take you into For the Culture, right? They've got their own version. It's called Take of the Day. So again, don't forget to check out Locked On Sports today.
Locked On Sports Atlanta family. How about this? We are on our way to 6,000 subscribers on Locked On Sports Atlanta YouTube channel. If you have not liked or subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go there, put in the search box Locked On Sports Atlanta, and we'll pop right up and you get all this goodness each and every day. Now, T, this is For the Culture. It is the intersection between sports, entertainment, the culture, and sometimes whatever the hell we want to talk about because that's just how we get down on this show. Today is no different. I talked about how Ed Reed done messed up the church's money. He also has ruined his chances to marry Tenitra Batiste. So, yeah, we'll explain that on another show. We won't have time for that today, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But Ed Reed, T, just recently hired as the head coach for the Bethune-Cookman football team. And he also found out, and he went on a tirade. And we also found out that he hasn't have a contract yet, so it might, not help that the AD is the basketball coach, is Reggie Theus. So, that might be a reason why it might be delayed at this point. But he was out there cleaning up and everything on the video. He was on live, and he just started spraying profanities everywhere to you about the HBCU as a whole and how he agrees with Prime and he was just airing it all out. We talk about the Hawks airing out their dirty laundry. Doggone Ed Reed aired it all out on social media. What in the world is wrong with this cat?
This is why you need a not necessarily Tenitra, but this is why you need a Tenitra type person in your life. Because you want to have this conversation with your PR person before you go on each and every outlet. Because life is different. You're no longer Ed Reed, the safety who wreaked havoc in the NFL for the Ravens and Texans. You're no longer the Ed Reed who is just the Hall of Famer and can stand up at the podium for 17 minutes and say what the heck he wants to say. You are the leader of a football program.
Right.
And so your words resonate not just across BCC and what they're doing, but it resonates across all of Black college football, and it really resonates across sportsdom overall because the world is paying attention to you because you're Ed Reed. So you got to remember that. The other thing is this, as a PSA to you, just like Black folk aren't monolithic, nor are HBCUs. So yes, some of them have more challenges than others, but name me a PWI that doesn't have more challenges than others. And for you guys who want to know, that is a predominantly white institution versus a historically Black college or university, right? So let's not act like all of the HBCUs are in the same boat, because I sure know we aren't.
Yeah.
We've been in the Black and we stay in the Black, okay?
Absolutely.
We don't have issues at Xavier University of Louisiana. That said, I need to remind you, Ed Reed, to make sure you do your research, because if BCC is in trouble financially or you have all of these other issues that you think they have, I suggest you do the research and find out how they got there. Because maybe those people are gone and you and Reggie Theus are part of a new wave who's going to help to set them straight. So why not be the solution versus focusing on and communicating about what you conceive to be the problem?
Yeah.
Or perceive.
Yeah. Can I add to that, T? to add to this, like, you know, I'm like the little brother. I'm like the little big brother right now. And another thing, like, dude, like you talking about you agree with Prime, right? Like that's the thing that stood out to me the most.
Sure.
I agree with Prime. But think about when it comes to agreeing with Prime, like you got to put in that work that Prime put in. Now, I know people may disagree or agree about the length of time that he put in at Jackson State. I'm not here for that.
Right.
I'm here about what he did when he first came in.
Yes.
And the work that he put in and the dedication that he put in from the jump, because he knew what he was getting himself into.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Come on now, Ed. Like you didn't know what you were getting yourself into, or were you just kind of glamour with the idea of, yeah, I'm gonna do what Prime did,
Right.
And that's probably why your butt doggone evoked his name in your doggone tirade. So
Hello.
guess what? Here's Ed. Here, bottom line, Ed. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to just put in some work first.
Yes, sir.
And attack that bad boy like you did your football career. Attack it the same way, the same effort and energy that you put into make it to the NFL and being one of the greatest safety, if not the greatest safety of all time. That same effort and energy that you put into that, you need to put the same damn energy that you put into this organization, this HBCU, and the entire culture. Because, dude, if you mess up or you start talking out the side of your neck, people gonna come for you, dude. Like this is real. Like if you coming up in here, you know exactly what you're getting into, and you better come in here ready to work, man. I know you can do it. Come on.
And I'm just gonna co-sign on the cosign. Ed Reed, some more research that Jarvis just dropped. Go figure out what we mean when we say talking out of the side of your neck. Done.
Ooh. And for those of you who make ATL Day Ones your first listen today, make sure you check out Locked On Sports today. They got each and everything that you are looking for when it comes to the national news. They might be talking about Ed Reed as well. How about this? You can find it wherever you find this podcast. And make sure, at the end of the day, guys, if you don't do anything else, make sure you show love, share love, and most importantly, spread love.
Yes.